Hello, welcome to Record Sports Hotline Live, brought to you by Scottish Water. Every save counts, on the pitch and off it. Keep showers short, only boil what you need, and don't leave the tap running. Goals matter, but water is always worth saving. Search Scottish Water today. I'm delighted to say. How's it going, Keith Scott? How's things?
Well, this is the show that we didn't think we were going to have to do.
Extra time.
Yeah.
Extra time, exactly.
So, yeah, last night, bit of a kind of curveball came at us when, we were actually going out for a bite of dinner last supper sort of a thing. And we find out from back home, we're here in Charlotte, we find out from back home that Steve Clarke has fallen on his sword, resigned as Scotland manager. Total lack of communication, total lack of class and courtesy actually from the SFA. And yet here we are. I kind of just feels a really unsatisfactory ending to a really unsatisfactory campaign, Scott.
Certainly does. I'd be lying, Dan, if I said I wasn't surprised by the news. Maybe it was just the timing of it. It was so unexpected. It was about 1 a.m. UK time. It was at 8 o'clock over here, roughly.
Mm-hmm.
So I was surprised. Post Brazil, I thought Steve Clarke did look a bit like a broken man and looked like a guy that might want to chuck it. But obviously in the background there was that new 4-year deal. So you're thinking, is he really going to walk away for that, having been given it just before the tournament? But I just think the nature of the campaign, how it's gone, when there was so much expectation, so many promises made, and ultimately the manager and the team failed to deliver, and I think it's really affected them, and that's resulted in this decision.
Well, Keith, as Scott rightly says, we're talking here on the 28th of June. It was the 28th of May that Steve Clarke signed a new 4-year deal, and he's lasted 4 weeks. Why sign that deal if you thought if we have a tournament doesn't go our way? Why?
It does feel it feels a bit of a knee jerk. I don't think Steve Clarke has handled this tournament well. I think he's been snappy at times. I think he's been prickly. Yes, Steve, prickly at times. I just feels as if it's all got a bit too much for him. I think that he kind of went into his default position in terms of he's dealing with the media and his strategy on the pitch. For the Morocco game, that was a game that ultimately, I think somebody's pointed out now, we could have beaten Haiti by 7 goals. It wouldn't have made a jot of a difference in terms of qualification in third place. What we needed was a point, and I think he gave up the right to try and get a point against Morocco by being so cagey and cautious and typically Steve Clarke. Ultimately, that's cost us. I tell you what, I do believe though, I think that this was probably something that was discussed at the time of him signing the 4-year deal. If this campaign goes south, then there's an exit strategy. I don't believe for a second that Steve Clarke's walked away from 4 years worth of money. So I think there was probably an arrangement in place. Plus the fact, you look at it last night, there was a statement that was written, it was a long statement. That wasn't cobbled together in 5 minutes. That's been sitting ready to go. And as soon as our position in this tournament was confirmed, i.e. we're out of it, someone pressed the button on it. So this is something that I'm sure the SFA, they've not been blindsided by it. They knew it was coming. Steve Clarke knew he was going to do it. Why they did it in the manner they've done it is just typically cack-handed and perfectly sums up this entire tournament.
I don't disagree, Dan, with Jacko, that I think there probably was an arrangement in place that if the tournament went really badly, then something would be ironed out. But it is worth pointing out, Ian Maxwell and Mike Mulroney were both asked specifically about that when the contract was signed. Are there any clauses? Are there any breaks in it? Steve Clarke was also asked. All 3 guys categorically denied. It was a straight 4-year deal, 2 campaigns, no hidden clauses. So where I maybe disagree with Jacko slightly, I think there's a chance that the SFA kind of hierarchy could have been a bit surprised by his decision. To me, I do believe it's knee-jerk, but I genuinely believe Steve Clarke has just been so bruised by this campaign and the way these 3 games have gone, obviously the reaction after it, that he's just decided enough's enough. And I think the SFA probably be surprised by his decision, because I think they would have probably stuck with him for the next campaign, irrespective of how this one went. But they've obviously sat down post Brazil and thought we need to come to some sort of arrangement here. And listen, you're guessing in terms of kind of financial package. No, I don't imagine for a minute he's getting 4 years' money when he's only 4 weeks into a contract. But you've got to imagine that they've come to some sort of arrangement where they meet, they find some middle ground, and Steve Clarke gets something, to walk away. But the SFA, I suppose, relatively unscathed, kind of financial wise after agreeing the 4-year deal.
2 questions I need to ask you guys before I let you go. One, will he be remembered fondly as a Scotland manager, and should he?
In time, he should be.
Yeah.
In time, right now, it's all a bit raw. It all feels a bit too soon. As I said, it all feels a little bit like a knee-jerk reaction, and it's laced with the bitter disappointment and recriminations from another tournament that we've qualified for, but then didn't turn up for it. But yes, in time, he should be thanked. He's bucked the trend. He's made Scotland a nation which now is expected to qualify for tournaments. When we went for years, that was just never the case. We were out in the wilderness for almost 3 decades. He deserves gratitude for that, no doubt about it. And he's done an excellent job in terms of changing the trend and making us qualify. Can't thank him enough for that. I think it also must be remembered, however, in that context, it's never been easier to qualify for a Euros or a World Cup. We've only just got to the round of 32 at this World Cup. That's usually the starting point, and Scotland have been dismissed. And I think that the biggest issue is I genuinely don't think that Steve Clarke handles tournament football very well. I think he's really good at getting us qualified, and he has been, and we thank him for it. But when it's actually come to a tournament situation, I don't know if he finds it a bit of a stress ball. I don't know if being in daily contact with everybody is necessarily something that he enjoys or likes. But look, do you know what? It's as simple as that. Yes, thanks very much, Steve. But you broke your word. You promised us it's going to be different this time. And ultimately, when push came to shove in this tournament, you reverted to type. And it's cost us. And we go home a little bit embarrassed by the kind of feeble nature of what we've managed to offer this tournament. Fans have been brilliant. Fans have been an absolute dream in terms of
class.
The Scotland's reputation. It's kind of how it's viewed on the international global stage. The fans have done that. They've been something that we can be really proud of. The team, no, the opposite, I'm afraid.
I totally agree with everything Jacko said on Steve Clarke. Dan, incredible job. I mentioned the other night, when you look back at his very first squad, you look at that compared to kind of what we've got now. He has built something. He's built. He's made us as Jacko says, a nation that now regularly qualifies for tournaments. There's no getting away for that. 3 out of the last 4. Could have been 4 out of 4, just missed the other one in a playoff, obviously. But I think I mentioned a piece this morning in the paper that sometimes in football, you hire a manager to get you to a certain point, and I think Steve Clarke's done that. But at times you then need a different type of manager or a higher level manager to then either keep you there or get you excelling at that level. I think that's probably where Scotland is at the moment. And the big question is obviously who's next? Who comes in next?
Well, do you know the thing is, Scott?
That's what I was going to ask you to finish, guys. Sorry,
Right,
to jump in. The odds at the minute, though, the favour. Sorry, go on.
Back to that, Daniel, because I think it's important to say, right? Because I've seen stuff and people saying, well, do you know what? This is just, what do you expect? We don't have the quality. We don't have that. I disagree entirely with that. We do have the quality. We do have the players. We should have been better at this World Cup, and that bit is on Steve Clarke, I'm afraid. I don't know what he's done to them mentally, but it looks scared of their own shadows, and it's been that way in the previous 2 tournaments. We've got to come to tournaments and try and enjoy ourselves and try and express ourselves like everybody else does. We've come here, we've curled up into a ball, we've tried not to get beaten up too badly, and now we're going home. It's actually quite pathetic. And I'm not buying this, that this is our glass ceiling, this is as good as it can get for Scotland. We've got players that are competing at the highest level. We should be competing at this level. But we've rolled over at this World Cup, and it's inexcusable.
Aye, no, I completely agree. I just wanted to finish with some of the names there. You mentioned, Scott. Who's next? The list in front of me, the bookies' favourites. David Moyes is 4-1, the favourite. Ange Postecoglou at 5-1. Alex Neil 6-1. Stephen Naismith 8-1. Scott Brown 10-1. Steven Gerrard's in there as well. Obviously, some silly ones. But David Moyes, would you leave Everton? Who would you go for? Personally, I love the sound of Ange Postecoglou. Don't know if it's something to be after, but I think he would be almost the antithesis of Steve Clarke. I think he would just go for it. But what do you guys think?
I agree with you, Daniel. Off the top of my head, I'd like to see them go for Big Ange, whether they could get him or not. He's obviously out of work, but he's been in the Premier League fairly recently. I don't know whether he thinks he's got another crack at that. But no, I'd like to see them go for Ange. He's experienced. He's been an international manager before. He's managed at tournaments and done well. We know his style of play, as you say, complete opposite probably to what Steve Clarke. What Steve Clarke's used to, as Jacko says, if Jacko's right and that the players are good enough and we've got good enough players coming through, you'd like to think Ange would get them playing a totally different style. I just think his experience, his knowledge of Scottish football, obviously for his time at Celtic, but crucially his experience at international level and at tournament level. And I just think he'd bring a real kind of freshness, something totally different. So the names you've mentioned there, listen, Davy Moyes is a very credible candidate, obviously, probably top Scottish manager out there at the moment. It might be difficult to get him away for Everton. You might think, he's at a stage of his career where maybe it's the right time to get into international management, but certainly looking at it last season at Everton, didn't seem that way. So I think Ange, as I say, it's still a bit raw at the minute. We're reacting pretty quickly, but I think Ange would be my kind of top target at the moment.
Keith?
I'm struggling to disagree. I'm not sure that Ange Postecoglou will want it, right? That's ultimately the biggest issue there. But if he was interested, then I agree. I think we need something fresh. I think we need something a little bit more ambitious. I'm not sure that Davy Moyes is the ambitious candidate here. He's
probably more similar to Steve Clarke.
I think he's very similar to Steve Clarke. If we want to shake it up, if we want to try and qualify for tournaments and then make an impact when we get to one of these events, I think it probably is a little bit of kind of outside the box thinking that's required. If Ange Postecoglou could take the Celtic team that he took over and transform it in the manner he did in such a short space of time, I'd love to see what he could do with that Scotland side. I think it'd be, and by the way, the second season of Big Ange Scotland manager would be the Euros, and he always wins something in his second season, mate. So.
He's a great motivator as well.
Yeah,
I think that's at international level.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, look, the other options. Look, you've got the candidates you've said. Scott Brown. I would love to see Scott Brown manager of Scotland one day, but I don't think he's got the experience to make him a genuine candidate at this point. Probably get Barry Ferguson. Some people might think about him because he's recently in the job at Rangers. I'm not sure that Barry Ferguson would be rushing for this one either. He's kind of looking about going, it probably needs to be something different. And if, as I said, if Big Ange was up for it, I think it's a conversation that the SFA should look to have.
Aye, couldn't agree more. Guys, thanks so much. Appreciate this a bit impromptu, so I appreciate you joining me. And thank you very much for watching at home. We'll be back soon. And stick with Record Sport for all of your latest Scotland news. But for now, thanks for watching Hotline Live, brought to you by Scottish Water. Cheers, guys.